So I'm going a bit chronologically. And so I started out, I was like a painter, and then I wanted to, think about like working outside and just like creating something which was in context, and I got kind of obsessed with like taking over various commercial spaces and just like making things that were part of the city. And so I'm sure that this is like something you guys are all familiar with, is like the various campaigns for like replacing ads and like taking over parts of the city and sort of feeling like that thought process about like infiltrating spaces which are generally commercial spaces, or which are like, it's, for me it was a lot originally about addressing the feeling that there's kind of no place for you in the city, that like I arrived as kind of a newcomer and I didn't really, like I very much needed to see myself and my life and like the things that I understood kind of reflected back to me in it. And so I just began this process of like making these kinds of small posters and things and sort of creating little graffiti and collages, and then, got really like heavily influenced by the dialogue that was around like why commercial spaces are so singularly commercial spaces and why it's such a one-way dialogue, and like how we can just sort of take some of those back and just feel that the city spaces are permeable by us and like for us. And so that was like a lot of the sort of early work that I was doing around. And then I started to think a lot about portraiture and just about kind of like having the feeling of a human presence like within the city walls. And I think that the thing about like living in the city is how sometimes alienating it can feel, particularly in areas like this in sort of downtown and stuff. And feeling like I wanted to make drawings which had a kind of a human element and which brought certain stories together, and then which sort of became part of the city and just communicated to people. So I'm just gonna go through a bunch of my drawings. Paper cutouts, and so I work a lot with printmaking. And the nice thing about printmaking is that it's like quite direct. So I work with like linoleum block and paper cutting, and I sort of started out like I was waitressing when I started doing a lot of this stuff, so I didn't have a lot of money. And I was, with the paper cutting in particular, I was like, what's the sort of cheapest way that I can like mass produce like large, powerful images, just like using like, a knife and a sheet of paper. And then I slowly started to like carve sheets of plywood, and then slowly I was able to afford like sheets of linoleum, but it's still like, it's very nice because how immediate it is. It's like very much just like in your hands, and you can take an image and print it yourself as many times as you want to. And I print at home. I don't have a printing press or anything, so I print by walking on the image. And this is, yeah. I won't get too much into I actually have to get on a plane really soon. So I'm going to be a little bit like, and then kind of leave. So I'm going to like just blaze through a lot of stuff. If you guys don't mind, like stop me right now if you have any questions like while I'm talking. Just, what?
Where are you going?
To New Orleans. Yeah.
To where?
To New Orleans.
Oh, cool.
So this is like shows the paper cutting process, like starting with a sketch, and then you like put it away and you have this image. And a lot of the stories, like sometimes my drawings will be just like friends and family, people that I see on the street, and then other times there will be like a very specific story. And oftentimes I am really interested in traveling to places where people are kind of organizing themselves and are just sort of figuring out like, just kind of like the daily thing of how to survive. And like, I feel like really interested in like the various ways that people are sort of putting their own lives together, and in like making drawings that reflect that, and then in sort of like sharing those drawings with the whole world. Yeah. Like this woman, for example, is like a woman who's part of a collective in South Mexico, in Oaxaca, and they're just like this amazing like self-organized group of women that when I met her I was just like, you're doing something rad. And wow. Oh yeah, which one? What? Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Oh yeah, this is the block. So you kind of can't quite see the top of it, but this is the block, and I have it on the wall. I iron it to keep it soft because like drawing at that scale, it gets like really tiring on your hands. This is a boy from a village in Haiti that I work in. I'll show you more images of that later on. This is my grandma.
Sorry, can you say one more time, because I didn't understand about the technique?
So this one, for example, is sheets of plywood that I carved out with a Dremel, which is like that little kind of like roto tool. And this one is sheets of linoleum And when I carve the linoleum, I soften it with an iron, and then I just carve it out with little linoleum knives. And then I use spray stencil, and I also use paper cut. So it's like all pretty basic, and it's all pretty like stuff you can do at home. And then like
It sounds so easy.
As long as
And I'm like, yeah, you know,
you see this.
I'm gonna do it.
Come do it.
You need a grown-up present to use the sharp knives.
No, I give them to children all the time. It's fantastic. Yeah.